And you hear this phrase a lot from athletes after they get interviewed and after an event, and you hear the phrase, "You've worked for it for 4 years." Now, working up to an Olympics, and I'm going to lead on to the lockdown situation. It's how strict are those schedules before? Like, are you trying to hit a peak just before you go to an Olympics? Is that the idea?
Well, yeah. So not necessarily a peak. Your physical peak should happen at the games. What you're looking for is signals and milestones along the way that signify that you are ready. So that's what you do. So the year beforehand, you will try out your what's known as your taper. That's the last phase of training leading into your race. Everyone's got their own individual taper. Some are 6 weeks long, some are 6 days long, some are 2 or 3 days long. It's all individual. What you're trying to do is reduce the amount of workload that you're doing to the point that you still feel fit and you're not losing fitness, but that you're gaining recovery and rest ready so that your muscles, your body, your nerves, everything's all firing on all cylinders when it comes to that race. Often you can miss that tip, what I call miss the taper. So in Beijing, for example, for my individual event, I missed my taper by about 3 or 4 days. 3 or 4 days after my individual, that's when I felt really good and I started to get better and better. So I got the taper wrong. I definitely know that. And it was just a few tweaks and changes in there. The last race that I did was the Olympic final, and I just felt amazing. I felt absolutely amazing. And I knew there and then that I just got that timeline a little bit out. But that's just the way it goes. Every year you train up to an Olympics, you are testing out that methodology, if you like. You're testing out kind of, does this work? Does that work? Is this going to work next year? So you've always got your eye on kind of the 4-year plan, or in many cases, 8-year plan.
But in that respect, knowing what we know now in the situation that we're in, what will those, if it was yourself, going back to when you were preparing for an Olympics, what situation are you in now where it's been postponed and instead of being 4 months away, it's 16 months away?
Yeah.
It must be, the schedules must go berserk.
Absolutely. I think there's going to be a lot of considerations. Age will be a consideration for some people. It would have fallen perfect. If it was Beijing for me, I would have been then over 30, which would have been a massive consideration. I would have gone into my 30s. That might have had a psychological effect on how I raced. You just don't know. I definitely know once I was done, I was done. I was physically, mentally, emotionally just done. I was ready to move on. So another year of that for me, coming towards the twilight years of my career, I don't know if I would have held up. I have no idea. It's hard to say, but it will put people in different positions depending on their age, their maturity. I'm mentoring a swimmer online. So I meet with that person. I've done for about 2 years, meet with that person online. I've got a few athletes that I work with. He in particular said to me this time last year, he said, "Oh, if only the Olympics were just another year away, as in 2021. And I said to him on a call on Monday, I said, "You might got your wish here, mate. You've got your wish here," because it's playing into his hands. He's got a couple of competitors that it's probably not playing into their hands. They could do with the Olympics being now, because he's not quite ready. But in a year's time, I've got a funny feeling he's going to be a cheeky outsider. So it's going to be really interesting to see how people respond. And I always talk about the difference between reacting and responding. Reacting is normally an emotional thing. It's normally quite quick and quite boom, and the goal kicks off. A response is normally thoughtful. It's when you it's when you really put your skills in line and you make sure you've got everything in ready to go, and you think it through and you work out, you strategize your next move. So it's going to be interesting to see how people respond. I still think people will be reacting. Bearing in mind they're not allowed in the water, or if they are, they're probably doing it in secret, quietly. I don't know. I haven't heard anything. But I can imagine some people will be getting access to water somehow. But the vast majority of athletes in swimming will not be touching water. That's going to be an interesting concept in its own.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I saw a picture only about, I think it was last week, of American Ryan Murphy, and he's got an inflatable pool in his back garden, just a 2 meter long one, and he's been basically being winched into it so he can continue to swim. And you've mentioned there that you're coaching someone now. What is it you're telling them to do? Because as you said, they can't use a pool.
Yeah, so we're looking for other gains. So where are the other gains? So a couple of the questions we've been asking is, this is not a situation where we're dealing with pressure. We're dealing with adversity. That's the second part of what I believe mental toughness is about. Mental toughness, firstly, is about dealing with pressure and handling it and turning it to your advantage. How can we spin it? Second part of it is, how do we get through and work through adversity and come out the other side stronger? So the one question I've been asking is, how do we emerge stronger? Everything that I ask this athlete to get involved in is about him coming out the other end stronger in some way, shape, or form. Mm. So, for example, every athlete, and I'm sure you were the same when you were swimming, maybe had aspects of their stroke or maybe injuries that you were carrying, niggles that you were carrying, and we kind of push through them. But this is a time now to maybe fix them. We've got the time. They've got the time to fix them. And generally speaking, most of injuries are fixed on dry land with some sort of core stability work or some sort of physiotherapy help. Well, that can be done in abundance now. We've got all the time in the world. So it's about going back over the performance and looking from a slightly different angle. So choosing a different lens is another question I ask of the athletes. Can we choose a different lens? We haven't got the water now. There's no way you can get in the water. What else can we do? And the last thing I go through with them is when you go through an adverse situation, there's a big long can't do list and it grows. So if you snap a tendon, there's a big long list. Your body tells you, I can't do this, I can't do that. You then reaffirm it by going, yeah, that's really, really painful and I can't do that. So the can't do list grows. The trick in any adverse situation is to shift on the other side and start to increase the can do list. That's very, very hard to see. You just have to look for those tiny glimmers. And our job is therefore to switch to that list and grow it every day, just by one, or reaffirm the first one and the second and the third until the fourth one appears. So there's lots of parts of the approach to how we train that we can work through. In fact, it's opened up so many opportunities. It just needs the athlete to be willing to see it. But like I said, a lot of them are still in that emotive, reactive stage. And then what often happens is they'll just get stuck into anything, do a program and go, well, why the heck am I doing this? Get frustrated and not do it. That's what'll happen.